cafe smelled like roasted coffee and warm pastries, but I barely noticed. My phone buzzed, and when I saw Leo's name, a chill ran down my spine. I stepped outside into the bright spring air and answered, trying to sound casual. The world around me blurred as his voice hit like ice. "I'm leaving you," Leo said, cold and almost triumphant. "And I already sold the apartment. You'll figure out where to live." My chest tightened. I gripped the phone as if I could hold reality in place. The casual cruelty in his tone made my hands tremble. The apartment we had built together, our sanctuary, was gone in one sentence. "You sold it?" I asked, forcing my voice steady, though inside I was shaking. Memories of our tiny balcony, late-night dinners, and first coffee mornings flooded me. "Yeah," he replied, laughing dryly. "Samantha and I need the money to start our life. She deserves better than that cramped little place." Samantha. The name stabbed me. I had suspected for months, late nights, mysterious meetings, sudden work trips, but hearing it out loud made the betrayal real. I drew a deep breath. "Sounds good," I said, more to calm myself than to reply to him. I refused to give him the satisfaction of seeing me break. The city noise faded as I ended the call. Around me, life continued, the barista calling orders, cars honking, but I felt frozen in a world that no longer made sense. 6 years. 6 years of shared dreams, love, and trust evaporated in one phone call. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, but something inside sparked. I knew I had a choice. I could crumble or I could rise. And even as heartbreak tightened around me, I realized the story wasn't over. My name is Emily, and until that day, I believed in the life I had built with Leo. Our Brooklyn apartment had been cozy, warm, and filled with laughter. Every corner held a memory, movie nights, record collections, and late-night conversations that made the city feel ours. I replayed all the little signs I had ignored, the sudden work trips, secretive smiles, unanswered texts. I had rationalized them, excused them. Now they pierced me like knives. Walking through the streets, I felt a hollow ache. Couples passed by, holding hands, laughing, unaware of my world unraveling. I envied their oblivious happiness. I remembered the excitement of our first apartment tour, picking paint colors, imagining Sunday breakfasts on the balcony, planning weekends in Montauk. Every dream we shared seemed erased now. Grief and anger collided inside me. I clenched my fists and let tears burn my eyes, wishing I could scream, shake him, demand answers. Instead, I wandered, lost in the city's hum, feeling invisible. Even the little quirks I had loved, the way he left coffee rings, hummed off-key in the shower, made the betrayal sting deeper. Every happy memory now felt like a cruel joke. I found a quiet park bench and sat, the spring breeze brushing against my face. I tried to ground myself, to remember that my life could continue beyond this devastation. In the distance, kids played, dogs barked, and the city thrived. The world didn't pause for heartbreak, and I realized I didn't have to either. Somewhere deep inside, a flicker of determination sparked. Leo had taken our past, but he couldn't steal my future. I took a shaky breath and stood, promising myself that I would survive. I didn't know how yet, but I knew I wouldn't crumble. A few days later, I returned to the apartment one last time. The walls echoed with laughter that no longer existed. The air smelled faintly of meals we had shared and memories that had turned bitter. Leo had left a note on the counter. "Good luck. You'll figure it out." No apology, no explanation, just a shove into emptiness. I ran my fingers along the countertop, tracing every scratch and mark like a map of our life together. Everything was gone, and yet I needed this closure, this final confrontation with reality. Samantha's name on the lease made my stomach twist. He had replaced me so quickly, erasing our years as if they had never mattered. Anger bubbled inside me. I wanted to yell, to scream, to make him understand the weight of his actions. Instead, I chose silence, letting the city noise absorb my fury. I remembered the quirks I had once adored, the way he sang badly in the shower, left socks around the apartment, and made terrible puns. Those memories now cut sharp, mixing nostalgia and heartbreak. I stepped onto the street with a small bag of my things. The city bustled around me, indifferent, but I felt alive in a strange, painful way. Clarity emerged from the chaos. Leo had made his choices, and I had to make mine. My power wasn't in revenge, it was in reclaiming my life. The apartment, the lease, the memories, they were gone. But my story wasn't over. I inhaled deeply, feeling the cold spring air fill my lungs. I would rebuild no matter how long it took. I rented a small studio in the Lower East Side. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. For the first time in days, I felt a small sense of freedom, a tiny spark of hope. The city outside pulsed with life, coffee shops, murals, people rushing by, but it felt like an invitation, not a reminder of what I had lost. Work became my anchor. Every project, every client, every success reminded me that my identity wasn't tied to Leo or the life we had shared. Friends rallied around me, unaware of the storm I had endured. Their laughter, their kindness, became the light in days that felt otherwise gray. Late at night, I sat by my window, Brooklyn spreading beneath me in neon and shadow. I thought about everything I had learned. Betrayal hurt, but it revealed strength I never knew existed. Moments of doubt still came, visions of confrontation, yelling, shaking him, but I pushed them aside. My power lay in moving forward, not retaliation. Small victories became my medicine. Finishing a project early, baking a perfect chocolate cake, discovering a quiet street lined with cherry blossoms. Life's beauty still existed, even in fragments. One rainy afternoon, I heard a familiar voice call my name. My heart skipped, thinking it might be Leo. But it wasn't him, it was someone new, someone kind, someone real. The spark inside me flared into a flame. I realized I could rebuild, not just survive, but thrive. Leo's cruelty no longer held power over me. I smiled, a quiet, victorious smile. My story wasn't over. In fact, it had only just begun. The first morning in my studio, sunlight spilled across the hardwood floor. I brewed coffee in my tiny kitchen, listening to the city awaken outside. The aroma reminded me that life was still moving forward, even if mine felt paused. I unpacked my few belongings, placing each item carefully, turning the small space into a home. Every decision felt empowering, a silent reclaiming of control over my life. Emails from work came in, and I dove in, immersing myself in deadlines, projects, and client needs. Focus became my shield against memories that threatened to overwhelm me. A walk to the nearby park became a ritual. I watched joggers pass, dogs chase sticks, and children laugh. Life thrived around me, indifferent to heartbreak, but it gave me hope. I met neighbors, strangers who shared smiles and quick hellos. Their warmth reminded me that human connection didn't have to carry pain, it could be simple and genuine. Late evenings, I explored hidden cafes and bookstores. Each discovery felt like reclaiming joy that Leo had tried to take from me. I was building a new world, piece by piece. Sometimes I imagined him walking past, seeing me thriving without him. A small satisfaction bubbled up, quiet but persistent. It wasn't revenge, it was resilience. Music became a constant companion. Vinyl records spun stories of love, loss, and hope. The melodies matched my mood, sometimes melancholic, sometimes daringly bold. I began journaling every night, spilling thoughts onto the page. Writing became therapy, a mirror reflecting my growth and newfound courage. By the end of the week, I realized that life without Leo wasn't empty, it was an invitation. I had survived the storm, and now I could chase the sun. One afternoon at a corner coffee shop, I noticed someone sketching in a notebook. Precision and care in each stroke caught my attention. I struck up a conversation, and his name was Jonah. He had an easy laugh and eyes that seemed to understand without explanation. We shared stories over cappuccinos, discovering small joys that had been missing for months. Jonah spoke about travel, books, and dreams, and for the first time I felt a spark of curiosity about the world again. It wasn't romantic yet, it was simply life reminding me that connection existed. We explored the city together on weekends, museums, hidden streets, and flea markets. Each adventure was a step toward reclaiming the vibrant Emily I thought I'd lost. I realized that pain and growth could coexist. My heartbreak didn't define me. It had shaped a stronger, wiser version of myself. Evenings were spent cooking together, laughing over mistakes in the kitchen. Simple moments became meaningful. The city's pulse matched our conversations, alive and unpredictable. Jonah didn't know my past with Leo, and that was liberating. I didn't have to justify my scars or protect myself from judgment. Sometimes I caught myself smiling, a full smile, remembering life before betrayal but not longing for it. I was present fully in every new experience. He introduced me to jazz clubs tucked away in dim streets. Music poured into the corners of my heart, filling spaces I hadn't realized were empty. By the end of the month, I understood that healing wasn't linear. It was messy, beautiful, and lived in moments like these where laughter replaced tears. Then, one evening, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "We need to talk." "It's important." My stomach twisted. Part of me prayed it wasn't Leo. The following day, I walked into a familiar office lobby and froze. Leo stood there, suit impeccable, hair perfectly styled as if nothing had happened. My pulse raced. He smiled, that smug, arrogant smile. "Emily," he said, voice casual. "We need to clear the air." I didn't respond. Silence became my shield. He followed me to a quiet corner. "I didn't mean to hurt you," he started, though his eyes betrayed no real remorse. Every word felt rehearsed. Memories of betrayal surged through me, Samantha, the apartment, the cold laughter. I clenched my fists beneath the table, refusing to give him power over my calm. He mentioned our past plans, vacations, and dreams, trying to evoke nostalgia. But nostalgia was no longer a chain. It was a tool for reflection, showing how far I had come. Jonah's presence in my life gave me confidence. I realized I could face Leo without fear, without anger controlling me. My strength was internal now. I told him plainly, "I've moved on. You don't get to rewrite my story." His smug expression faltered for a brief, almost imperceptible moment. The encounter ended with him walking away, leaving a trace of tension in the air. But for me it was liberation, a confirmation that the past had no dominion over my present. That night I walked home, Brooklyn lights reflecting in puddles. My heartbeat was steady, and my soul felt lighter than it had in years. Spring gave way to summer, and the city thrived in heat and chaos. I signed a small lease for a studio in Williamsburg, further from memories that still stung. Work flourished. Clients praised my creativity, and I found a rhythm in deadlines that both challenged and fulfilled me. I was becoming unstoppable in ways I hadn't imagined. Jonah continued to be a quiet, steady presence. We built routines, morning coffees, long walks, and weekend adventures that felt like new traditions. I started a small art project at home, painting abstracts inspired by the skyline and river reflections. Each brushstroke was a reclamation of my joy. Friends visited often, curious about my new life. They marveled at my energy and transformation, unaware of the battles fought quietly inside me. Evenings became ritualistic, tea, journaling, music. I celebrated small victories and reflected on lessons learned. Pain and growth were now intertwined. Leo's memory surfaced occasionally, but it was less like fire and more like embers, reminders of strength, not wounds. I could recall betrayal without trembling. One hot August night, I walked across the Williamsburg Bridge, city lights flickering below, feeling expansive, free, and untethered. Hope became my guide, not revenge or anger. I understood that happiness wasn't dependent on someone else's actions. It was crafted by my choices. By the time I returned to my studio, the skyline glittered like a promise. My story, though scarred, was thriving, and the plot twist of my life was yet to fully unfold. Even with Jonah by my side, a shadow lingered. Certain streets reminded me of Leo, certain songs echoed his laugh, and sometimes I wondered if I'd ever truly escape that chapter. Late one night, I found myself scrolling through old messages, a dangerous curiosity. Each text pulled memories from the past, sharp and vivid, making me question how much of me had changed. I tried to focus on work, but my mind wandered to the apartment, to the stolen dreams, to the casual cruelty in his tone. Anger rose again, hotter but fleeting. Jonah noticed my silence one evening. "You're thinking about him again," he said softly. I nodded, ashamed but honest. Healing didn't mean forgetting. I wandered through Prospect Park, watching couples and families. Their laughter should have been comforting, but instead it felt like a reminder of what I had survived, and what I could never allow again. I realized that part of recovery wasn't running from the past, but confronting it. I needed to acknowledge the betrayal without letting it define me. At home, I poured these thoughts into my journal, letting words map the labyrinth of pain, anger, and resilience I had navigated. Writing became both weapon and shield. I began to understand that strength wasn't just rising above. Sometimes it was standing in the ruins of your life and declaring that you would rebuild, regardless of the scars. Jonah offered quiet support, never pushing, always present. His calm steadied me, proving that not every connection carried hidden intentions or cruelty. By the end of the week, I felt a fragile balance between shadow and light. Past still whispered, but my voice was louder, clearer, and unafraid. Walking through a summer street fair, I noticed someone sketching by a fountain. His concentration reminded me of Jonah, but there was something different, an intensity in his eyes that drew me in. His name was Marcus, a painter new to the city, full of energy and dreams. We talked about art, the challenges of creativity, and the beauty hidden in mundane details. There was no flirtation, no past ghosts, just two strangers connecting over shared passion. Yet his presence stirred something unexpected, a mixture of curiosity and cautious excitement. I invited him to show me his work in a nearby gallery. Each piece was a story, raw and unfiltered, echoing emotions I had buried deep inside. Jonah joined me later, and the dynamic was interesting. I realized I could experience new relationships without comparing them to past pain. I could be present without fear. That evening, we walked along the East River, the skyline reflecting in the water like fractured glass. It reminded me that beauty could exist even in fragments. I laughed freely, a sound that had been rare in the months after Leo. The city seemed alive with possibilities, and for the first time I felt untethered from heartbreak. Marcus' passion was contagious. I began sketching again, reclaiming creativity that had been dormant. Each line was a declaration that I was no longer defined by loss. Jonah watched me with pride and patience, never jealous, always supportive. I realized that love and connection could exist without consuming or controlling me. By nightfall, I felt a sense of expansion, an acknowledgement that life could surprise, delight, and heal even when shadows of the past lingered. One rainy evening, a package arrived at my studio. It was small, unmarked, and heavy. Inside, I found a stack of letters, Leo's handwriting sprawled across every page. Each letter detailed plans he had kept secret, investments, trips, promises made to Samantha before I ever suspected. Reading them, I felt betrayal anew, sharper than before. But among the letters, there was a single envelope addressed to me personally. The handwriting was different, hesitant, almost apologetic. I hesitated before opening it. Inside, Leo confessed mistakes, manipulations, and regrets. He admitted that he hadn't been entirely honest with Samantha, that the perfect new life was a facade built on lies. Shock mingled with a strange relief. The man who had seemed untouchable, cruel, and triumphant had vulnerabilities. He wasn't perfect, and his smile had always been a mask. I sat on the floor, letters scattered, realizing that closure wasn't about revenge. It was about understanding, accepting, and using knowledge to reclaim power. I thought of Jonah, Marcus, friends, and the life I had begun to rebuild. Their presence reminded me that the future could be brighter, despite shadows of the past. Leo's confession shifted the narrative. Betrayal was real, but manipulation was temporary. My strength, resilience, and new connections had far more weight than his false triumphs. I carefully placed the letters back in the envelope, tucking them away. They were evidence of the past but would not control my present. By the time I finished, rain had stopped and the streets glistened. I stepped outside with determination, ready for a life authored entirely by me. Summer faded into fall, and the city's colors mirrored the changes within me. Leaves turned gold and red, and I felt a transformation inside and out. Jonah and I continued our quiet life of routines, shared coffees, and laughter that didn't carry the weight of old pain. Stability became a haven, a grounding point in the chaos of memory. But Marcus' energy lingered. His creative fire reminded me that unpredictability could be thrilling, that life wasn't just comfort, it could be adventure too. One night, over candlelight and soft jazz at a gallery, I realized I had choices. Stability or passion, comfort or risk, safety or thrill. Life was a crossroads. I reflected on Leo, on betrayal, on lessons learned. Pain had shaped me, but it didn't define me. Every path forward was mine to claim, built on strength and experience. Jonah's gentle hand over mine was grounding, while Marcus' intensity sparked curiosity. Neither relationship carried shadows of the past. They were reflections of who I had become. I walked the streets alone for a moment, feeling the crisp air, the smell of roasted chestnuts from street vendors, and the sounds of the city. Freedom was tangible, exhilarating. Every choice I had made, from leaving the apartment to rebuilding my studio to embracing new connections, led me to this point. My power was in choosing, consciously, fully, without fear. I realized that the plot of my life had twists, betrayals, and heartbreaks, but also resilience, hope, and the capacity to love differently. That night, as I returned home, I knew that the final chapters of my story weren't written yet, and I was ready to author them. The city was quieter than usual as I walked home, the autumn wind rattling window panes. Shadows stretched across streets, reminding me of memories I had tried to bury. Jonah noticed my unease and asked, "What's wrong?" I shrugged, unsure if it was the lingering fear or the letters I still hadn't fully processed. I stopped by a familiar bookstore, hoping the smell of old paper and ink could ground me. Browsing shelves, I realized some parts of the past were unavoidable. They surfaced in fragments, unbidden. At home, I unpacked Marcus' sketches. He had left one in my bag, a cityscape with shadows over a solitary figure. It resonated more than I wanted to admit. I poured tea and sat by the window, Brooklyn lights reflecting on the glass. Even in the city's glow, shadows of betrayal flickered, persistent like a distant echo. Leo's confession lingered in my mind, a double-edged revelation. I was free from his triumph, yet aware that deception had deeper roots than I knew. Jonah stayed nearby, reading quietly. I felt the contrast, a calm presence versus the storm of past memories swirling in my head. I realized healing wasn't linear. Every quiet street, every city glow reminded me that the past was still alive, testing my resolve. I began journaling again, mapping emotions, fears, and the quiet strength that had carried me through months of uncertainty. By nightfall, I felt an unsettling curiosity. Past was whispering for attention, demanding answers I hadn't yet sought, and I knew I would face it. A knock at my door startled me late one evening. It was rare for anyone to visit without warning. Marcus stood there, rain dripping from his jacket, holding a small envelope. "I found this for you," he said quietly. His eyes held concern. I took the envelope, feeling a mix of apprehension and curiosity. Inside there was a photograph, me, Leo, and someone unfamiliar, at a cafe months before he left. My heart raced. This was new information, a piece of a puzzle I hadn't seen. I asked Marcus how he got it, but he shrugged. "Found it in a folder at the gallery. Thought it belonged to you." My hand shook. What did Leo hide and why now? Jonah arrived soon after, sensing my tension. I showed him the photo, watching his reaction. He didn't judge. He only offered quiet support, letting me process in my own way. The photograph became a mystery. Who was the stranger? What part of Leo's story had he concealed? I felt the old ache of betrayal mix with adrenaline and fear. I spent hours retracing memories, piecing together dates, messages, and small inconsistencies. Picture that seemed innocuous before now carried the weight of secrets. By midnight, I realized I had a choice. Let the past haunt me or confront it directly. For the first time in months, fear and determination intertwined. I decided I would uncover the truth, no matter how uncomfortable or dangerous. Calm life I had built couldn't exist alongside hidden lies. As the city slept, I sat at my desk, plotting the steps. I didn't yet know the storm I was inviting, but I couldn't turn back. The next morning, I traced Leo's old appointments, revisiting cafes and streets I hadn't seen since our breakup. Each location revealed fragments, faces, conversations, clues I had previously ignored. Jonah accompanied me, steadfast, a grounding presence. I didn't share all my theories, only letting him witness my methodical pursuit of the truth. I visited the cafe from the photograph. The barista recognized the stranger, a man named Peter, who had often met Leo here months before our breakup. Peter was charming with a casual demeanor, but there was something guarded in his eyes. I realized Leo's life had been far more tangled than I had imagined. I asked subtle questions, probing gently, careful not to reveal too much. Every answer, every hesitation, hinted at hidden truths I wasn't ready for. Back in my studio, I spread maps, notes, and photos across the table. Chaos of evidence mirrored the storm brewing inside me, a mix of fear, anger, and urgency. Jonah watched silently, offering coffee and reassurance. His steady calm contrasted sharply with my racing thoughts and emotional intensity. Hours turned into days. I discovered small details, hidden meetings, overlooked emails, and inconsistencies in Leo's story. Each revelation added layers of betrayal. Yet with every piece uncovered, I felt a strange sense of empowerment. The more I learned, the more control I reclaimed over the narrative of my life. By the end of the week, I realized the plot twist was forming, something that would upend everything I thought I knew about Leo, Samantha, and the life I had lost. I received a cryptic message, "Meet me at the pier." 9 p.m. Alone. My pulse quickened. It was vague, unnerving, but I knew I had to go. The pier was empty, the water reflecting the moonlight in eerie patterns. The city's distant hum barely reached me as I waited, heart racing. A figure emerged from the shadows. It was Peter, the man from the photograph. He looked anxious, torn between fear and urgency. "You need to know the truth," he said, voice low. "Everything Leo told you, everything he hid, it's worse than you think." I stepped closer, wary but determined. "Explain," I demanded. My voice was steady, but my chest tightened with anticipation. Peter revealed secrets. Hidden debts, manipulated relationships, lies spanning months, carefully orchestrated to maintain Leo's image while controlling everyone else. Shock surged through me, a mix of anger, betrayal, and disbelief. Truth was more complicated, more dangerous, and far more personal than I had imagined. As he spoke, fragments of the past fell into place: the apartment, Samantha, the unexplained trips. Each revelation cut deeper but also clarified everything. I realized my strength wasn't just surviving heartbreak, it was seeing the truth, no matter how ugly, and deciding my own path forward. By the time I walked home, the pier was silent, the city lights reflecting my resolve. I was ready to confront the final chapter, and nothing would hold me back. The following evening, I finally faced Leo at his downtown loft. The city lights shimmered through floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows across the room. He looked calm, arrogant even, like nothing had happened. But I could see cracks in his armor, subtle tremors in his hands, the tension behind his eyes. "I know everything," I said, voice steady. "The lies, the secrets, the manipulation. It's over, Leo." He smirked, trying to regain control. "You don't understand. You never really knew me," he said, though his tone betrayed fear. I recounted everything Peter had revealed: the debts, the double life, the careful plotting to control Samantha, me, and even our friends. His smug smile faltered. "You're twisting things. You have no proof," he tried, but the letters and photos on my table told another story. Jonas stood beside me, silent support radiating strength. I no longer needed to fight alone. I had allies and clarity. I told him plainly, "You lost control the day you lied. You underestimated me, and now you've lost everything that mattered." For the first time, I saw genuine fear cross his face. The man who once laughed at my pain was suddenly small, fragile, exposed. By the time I left the loft, I felt a surge of freedom. The confrontation wasn't just about Leo, it was about reclaiming every moment stolen from me. Back in my studio, I pieced together the final puzzle. Peter had handed me documents proving Leo's embezzlement from shared accounts, falsified contracts, and hidden assets. I realized that Leo's arrogance had been his undoing. He had assumed I would crumble, but instead I had gathered knowledge and allies, turning his web of deception into my empowerment. Jonah and I strategized quietly, ensuring that the legal consequences would reach him without jeopardizing our safety or sanity. The final revelation hit hardest. Samantha had been unaware of the full scope. Leo's perfect new life was a facade, and she had been manipulated as much as I had. I felt a strange mixture of pity and anger. Betrayal had consequences, but so did ignorance. People had suffered because of his selfish choices. I understood that closure wasn't revenge. It was exposing truth, protecting those who didn't know, and moving forward stronger than ever. Marcus reached out, sensing the shift in my energy. His creativity and unpredictability reminded me that life could be rebuilt, vibrant, and untethered. I allowed myself to feel joy without guilt, knowing that Leo's shadow could no longer touch me. Past was now fully visible but powerless. The city outside buzzed with neon and life, reflecting my inner state, chaotic yet beautifully alive, full of possibilities. For the first time in months, I felt complete, not healed by absence but strengthened by clarity and action. Months passed. Leo faced legal scrutiny and financial consequences. The arrogance that once defined him had collapsed, leaving nothing but silence. Samantha severed ties, realizing that she had been caught in the manipulation. I didn't celebrate her loss. I only acknowledged the justice that had been long overdue. My studio transformed into a home that reflected growth, creativity, and resilience. Every corner echoed independence and strength. Jonah and I deepened our bond, no longer shadows of the past but companions in a fully realized present. Trust had been earned, not assumed. Marcus continued to inspire me creatively, but the focus remained on myself, my work, my art, my life. I was thriving in ways I had never imagined. Letters from Peter provided closure, tying together lingering questions and ensuring that the full truth of Leo's deception was recorded. I revisited the pier where secrets were unveiled, now seeing it as a symbol of empowerment, a place where past fear had transformed into clarity. Autumn gave way to winter, the city adorned with lights and bustling streets. My story mirrored the season, harsh, revealing, and ultimately beautiful. I realized that the true plot twist wasn't Leo's betrayal. It was my capacity to rise, reclaim, and redefine my life beyond pain. And in that moment, I smiled fully, knowing the final chapters were authored entirely by me. One evening, a letter arrived and signed. Inside was a confession, not from Leo but from someone I never expected, Samantha. She admitted her ignorance, shared the ways she had unknowingly contributed, and expressed remorse. Her honesty was a mirror, showing the complexity of human choices. It was then I understood. The final twist wasn't revenge or exposure, it was empathy. Even those entangled in betrayal had layers, motives, and blind spots. Jonah and I reflected on the journey, the heartbreak, the secrets, the discoveries. We realized that love, resilience, and connection were stronger than deceit. Marcus Art Exhibition opened that weekend. I attended, walking the gallery with calm confidence, surrounded by beauty I had helped nurture. Leo's laugh, once so powerful in my memory, had faded. What remained was clarity, perspective, and the ability to live fully. I revisited my old apartment one last time, not with sorrow but with gratitude for lessons learned. Each memory, once painful, now strengthened me. The city stretched before me in lights and movement. Life was unpredictable, complex, and occasionally cruel, but also vibrant, creative, and mine. In the end, the greatest twist was not Leo's betrayal, but the transformation it forced within me. I had emerged whole, wiser, and unstoppable. I walked forward into the night, Brooklyn alive beneath my feet, knowing my story had only just begun, and I was ready for every chapter.